In today's video, we are going to be breaking Invasion of Ikoria. This is the list that we are going to be playing, which X-File recently won a modern challenge with. And looking at the deck, we are playing a Traverse package and Invasion of Ikoria. This is a 2-mana X battle that allows you to search your library for a non-human creature with mana value X or less onto the battlefield, meaning that we can search up a Death Shadow, a Tarmogoyf, or even a Vampire Hexmage. The reason that I emphasize Vampire Hexmage is because this is a 2-mana creature that can be sacrificed to remove counters from target permanent, which means that if we search this off of Invasion of Ikoria and then sacrifice the Hexmage to remove all the counters off of Invasion of Ikoria, we can have a 4-mana 8/8. While an 8/8 is powerful, the fact that it can assign damage as if creatures were not blocked this turn means that we can have absurdly powerful turns with Shadows and Tarmogoyfs, killing our opponent out of nowhere. So we're going to be taking this sweet brew through a League of Modern to see how powerful Invasion of Ikoria really is. Match 1, we're on the draw. Hand looks great. One casts out a Bauble, then plays out an Island. We'll lead on cycling the Street Wraith, drawing Goyf, will shock and Tomb and Thoughtseize. My opponent has a Spell Pierce for it. My opponent plays a Spire Bluff into a Ragavan, draw another Goyf, grab a Watery Grave, and play out a Tarmogoyf. And in response, they consider. My opponent plays a Ledger Shredder into a Steam Vents, and no attacks for them. We'll cast out the Traverse we drew for turn, grabbing a Swamp, play for turn. I'm gonna cast another Ledger Shredder into an Unholy Heat, discarding Ragavan, and a land turning on Delirium. They attack us for 3, we'll Dress Down. We take 3 and draw a Verdant. Draw another Dress Down for turn, we'll play a Goyf. Goyf resolves, we'll play Verdant, holding up Push and Dress Down. Opponent casts an EI, and in response, we'll push one of the Shredders, and they Spell Pierce our push. When they connive, they grow both of their Shredders. They play an Island and attack in for 5. We draw a Bauble for turn, and in response, they consider. We Bauble ourselves, seeing a push, but we'll Traverse. And looking at our deck, we have no outs here, so we're going to scoop it up and get on to sideboarding. We're going to bring in 2 Veil Summer and 3 Nihilist Spellbomb for our Dress Downs and Stubborn Denials. Game 2, our 7 looks great. We'll go turn 1 Swamp and 2 Thoughtseize, and we'll take the Consider. Opponent plays Canal. We draw a Goyf, we fetch Shock and play it out. Opponent plays Misty, passing. We draw an Invasion, we'll attack in for 3, then pass back. Opponent plays and cracks Delta, then dashes out a Ragavan. We will Fatal Push it, and they have a Spell Pierce, and we have a Veil, drawing into a Thoughtseize, and Ragavan goes down. Draw a Verdant for turn, we'll Thoughtseize the opponent, taking their Blood Moon, packing in for 5, playing a Verdant, and playing out a Spellbomb. Opponent plays an Island and scoops him up. Get into game 3. Game 3, our 7's quite powerful. Opponent shocks into Steam Vents into a Ragavan. Draw a Verdant, we'll cycle a Street Wraith, find another land, we'll cycle another Street Wraith, find a Traverse, we'll shock and Tomb and Thoughtseize the opponent, and we'll take their Ledger Shredder. Opponent goes to combat, attacks us for 2, exiles our Traverse, they play Delta and pass. We draw Delta, we'll play out Shadow, then play out our land. Opponent plays an Island into a Ledger Shredder. We draw another Shadow for turn, we'll play out a Delta and attack in for 3. They do not block, we'll fetch Shock, and opponent takes 6. Then we'll play out another Shadow. Opponent casts an Unholy Heat on our Shadow, then cast out a Murktide Regent, conniving away an Island, then runs out a DRC. We draw a Street Wraith for turn, we'll play Delta and attack in with the team, and they double chump. We'll play Goyf and pass back, and opponent scoops them up. Let's get into match number 2. Just a friendly reminder to leave a subscribe, it really helps me out, and it's free to do. Match 2, we're on the play, and hand looks great. We'll cast out both Baubles, look at our top, Tina Dress Down, and we'll shuffle that away, grabbing an Overgrown Tomb. We draw Thoughtseize, and opponent plays a Foothills, and we see opponent has an Archon, which means they're on creativity. We draw a Hexmage and a Bauble for turn, play out the Bauble, then Thoughtseize the opponent, and we'll take their Fable. We Bauble them on the end step, seeing a Prismari command. Opponent plays Foothills and passes. We fail to find a land again, so we'll Traverse for a Swamp, then play it out for turn. Opponent shocks into Steam Vents into a Fable. On the end step, we'll push this. Draw a push for turn, but we're too far behind here, so we're going to scoop them up and get on to sideboarding. We're going to take out 4 push for Flusterstorms and EEs. Game 2, we have another 1-lander, so we're going to mull. Our 6 is fairly weak, but we got to keep putting back a Misty. We go turn 1 Delta. Opponent goes turn 1 Tarn. We draw a Traverse, we'll shock in a Tomb, then fetch out a Watery Grave and play our Hexmage. On the end step, they bolt our Hexmage. Opponent plays a Stomping Ground into a Wrenn 6. We draw an Abrupt Decay, we'll kill the Wrenn, and fetch shock out a Tomb and play a Shadow. Opponent fetch shocks into a Teferi, bouncing our Shadow. Draw a Street Wraith, we'll cycle it, drawing an Invasion, play out a Shadow and an EE on 0. Opponent plays a Mire and endings our Shadow. Takes up Teferi and plays out a Fable. On the end step, we'll blow up EE so that we have Delirium. We draw a Stubborn Denial, we'll Traverse, picking up a Shadow. Then we'll play it out. Opponent loots away a Bolt, takes up Teferi and plays out a Dwarven Mine. And they have a creativity, and at this point, we are too far behind, so we're getting on to match number 3. Match 3, we're on the draw, and hand looks fine. Opponent goes turn 1 Triumph. We draw a Street Wraith, we'll cycle it, finding Dress Down, we'll fetch Shock and Thoughtseize, and we'll take the Teferi Time Raveler. Opponent plays out another Triumph. We find land, we'll shock in the Breeding Pool, holding up Dress Down. Opponent fetches a Plane, then plays out a Reef. In response, we'll Dress Down, drawing into a Misty. Draw another land, we'll lead on Inquisition, and we'll take the Risen Reef, then fetch Shock and Fatal Push this Risen Reef, and we'll also Traverse, picking up a Death Shadow. Opponent untaps and slams the Fable. We draw a Bauble, we'll play that, look at our top card, seeing a land we do not want, we shuffle it away, and then we will Abrupt Decay the Fable and play out a Shadow. Opponent casts a Binding on our Shadow, plays a Misty and attacks in for 2, fetches out an Island, and then buys Karuga. We draw a Goyf for turn, we'll Bauble ourselves, seeing a Shadow that we'd very much like, so we'll play out Tarmogoyf. Opponent casts another Binding, killing our Goyf, attacks us for 2, making a Treasure, we're down to 1. They play a Forest, then cast a Karuga, drawing 2. We draw a Traverse, but we can't block both of these with a Leyline Binding in hand, so we gotta get into sideboarding. We're gonna bring in Dress Down and Spreading Seas for 3 Fatal Push. Game 2, we keep our 7. 1. We'll lead on Bobble looking at our top card, seeing a land which we would like, so we'll cycle Street Wraith, then fetch Shock and a Tomb, and cast an Inquisition. And we'll take their Fable. We draw into a Delta, and they play a Strand. We top deck a Thoughtseize, we'll fire it off, taking the Risen Reef, then we fetch Shock and a Watergrave, and cast out a Shadow. Opponent shocks in a Temple Garden, then cast a Leyline Binding on our Shadow. Draw land for turn, we'll shock and Breeding Pool, and cast out our Grist. Grist resolves, and we tick up, milling over a Just Down, getting a 1/1. Opponent plays Cavern on Elemental into a Risen Reef, putting in a Flooded Strand. We draw a Goyf, we'll play Verdant, and down to Grist, sacking our Insect token, and trying to kill Risen Reef. We'll cast our Traverse, picking up a Shadow, fetch Shocking in a Tomb, playing Shadow, into a Tarmogoyf, fetches a Plains, and casts an Omnath. Then they play out a fetch land, finding a Ragran Triumph, and playing out Teferi. Opponent bounces their Leyline Binding, then Solitude's a Death Shadow, killing both of them. Draw land for turn, we'll attack down Fairy, then tick up with Grist, milling over an Invasion. Opponent attacks Grist, we'll chump block, then they cast out an Elishnorn. We draw Traverse for turn, we'll cast that out, and pick up Tarmogoyf. Attack the opponent for 7, play out a Tarmogoyf, and then down tick with Grist, sacking a Tarmogoyf and killing the Elishnorn. Opponent casts out a Binding, taking our Tarmogoyf, and then they attack down our Grist. They buy Karuga and pass back. We draw a Street Wraith, and we will cycle it, then draw a Tarmogoyf. Opponent plays out a Karuga and draws 2, plays out a Triumph, gains 4 life. Draw Spreading Seas for turn, we'll cast that on their Triumph. We draw an Invasion of Ikoria, we'll save that for next turn, and we'll attack in with our Tarmogoyf. Opponent plays Cavern on Elemental and gains 4. They cast out a Teferi, bouncing our Tarmogoyf. They attack us for 9, we're down to 2. And they have a Fire Ice killing us. Let's get on to match number 4. Match 4, we keep our 7. Opponent goes turn 1 Field Rune. We find a Misty, we'll cast Bobble, looking at their top card, seeing a Fatal Push. We'll fetch Shock and an Overgrown Tomb and cast a Thoughtseize. And we'll take one of the Profane Tutors. They play another Field Rune. We draw a Delta for turn, we'll cycle a Street Wraith, drawing a Push, fetch Shocking and Watery Grave, casting Traverse, grabbing a Shadow, and running it out. Opponent plays out a Coffers, funny mana base. We draw a Delta, we'll fetch Shock, grabbing a Tomb, cast a Traverse, grab a Shadow, play a Shadow, attacking for 6, and hold up Stubborn Denial. Opponent untaps, missing their land drop, and concedes. For sideboarding, we're going to bring in Flusterstorm, Veil Summer, Spreading Seas, Collective Brutalities for Dress Down, Brocade, and pushes. Game 2, our hand's a Snapper. Opponent goes turn 1 Swamp. We draw a Goyf, we'll bobble ourselves, gain a Dried Arbor, which we do not want, fetch Shock in a Tomb, and cast a Thoughtseize. And we'll take their March. We draw a fetch land, and they play out their Coffers. And we top deck a Dress Down, fetch Shock in a Breeding Pool, and then cast a Death Shadow. Opponent plays a Swamp into a Bloodchief's Thirst, and we'll Flusterstorm that, countering the Thirst. We draw another Shadow for turn, we'll run that out, then attack in for 1. Opponent's down to 19, we'll hold up Veil. Opponent plays out an Urborg, then cast a Damnation. Draw a Street Wraith, we'll cycle it, finding a Verdant, then we'll run out a Tarmogoyf. Opponent plays a Field Rune into an Invoke, fetch out a Tomb, and then cast our Veil, countering an Invoke and drawing a Misty. We top deck a Thoughtseize, we'll cast that, taking another Evoke. Play out our Misty, and then cast our Grist. Pick up, milling over a Goyf, and attacking in for 5. Opponent top decked another Invoke, we'll sacked Insect and Grist, then runs out an EE on 1. We top deck a Traverse, holy! Play that out, pick up another Goyf, play it out, and attacking for 6. They're down to 8, and we got lethal on board. Oh my god, opponent drew a Relic! They immediately pop it, then they play a Swamp for turn, and we draw an Invasion for turn. We'll fetch out a Dryad Arbor, and then attacking for 2. And they Field Rune our Breeding Pool, so we have Just Down now. Drawing into a Verdant. We'll play a Verdant and pass back. I got opponent Torment the Hairflyers for 11. We are so dead. Let's get into game 3. Game 3, our 7's Keeper. We'll lead on cycling a Street Wraith. Find another Street Wraith, we recycle, drawing into a Shadow. Opponent plays out a Swamp. We draw a Misty. We'll double fetch Shock, then play out a Tarmogoyf. Opponent plays Coffers and passes. We draw a Bobble. We'll bobble ourselves, team Traverse, attacking for 3. Then we'll fetch Shock, play a Death Shadow into a Tarmogoyf. Opponent plays another Coffers, passing. We draw a Thoughtseize. We'll play a Swamp into the Thoughtseize, and we'll take Damnation and attacking for 16. Opponent plays Urborg, floats 6 mana, and concedes. Let's get into match number 5. Match 5 are on the play, and we're keeping 7. We fetch Shock into a Thoughtseize. An opponent's on something. We'll take their Shatter Skull Smashing. Opponent goes Mountain into Ragavan. We draw a Thoughtseize. We'll rip that off, and we'll take the unique card and Thought-Knots here. We'll fetch Shock in a Grave, then play out our Shadow. Opponent plays Vista, passing. We draw an Inquisition, back in for 3. Opponent downs to 17, and we'll cast a Tarmogoyf. Opponent shocks in a Shatter Skull Smashing, fetches out a Waste, and plays a Mana Reshaper. We draw Invasion of Ikoria. We'll replicate the Mana Reshaper, which flips the Cavern. Then we'll attack in for 7. Opponent goes Combat, attacking with Ragavan, exiling our Shadow, which they cast. Then play out a Blood Moon. We find a Street Wraith, we'll cycle it into a Bobble, which we use and see a Fury on top of their deck. Opponent attacks in the Shadow, we trade. We draw a Stub, we're attacking for 5, and opponent's down to 1. Opponent casts out a Seasoned Pyromancer, discarding 2 Smashers, getting 2 1/1s. They attack us with Ragavan, exiling nothing. We draw a Dress Down, we just can't win at this point. Let's get on to sideboarding, and we'll make no changes to the deck. Game 2, our 7's risky, but we keep. Lead on turn 1, tap Tomb. Opponent goes Vista into a Chalice on 0. We find a Traverse, fetch Shock in a Breeding Pool, and play out a Tarmogoyf. Opponent plays Temple into a Chalice on 1. We draw a Misty, attack the opponent for 1. Opponent plays a Waste into a Thought-Knots here. We'll Dress Down in response, and we draw into a Hex Mage. Then we draw into a Shadow, we'll Shock and Tomb, play out an Invasion of Ikoria for X equals 0. We'll search our library for a Dryad Arbor, then play out a Vampire Hex Mage. Opponent plays a Mountain into a Reality Smasher. Passing back, on the end step, we'll sack our Vampire Hex Mage and get our 8/8. Our big dino is here. We draw a Dress Down for turn. We'll play Traverse, which gets countered, but it'll grow our Goyf. Then attacking for 8. Opponent double blocks. We'll kill the Thought-Knots here, drawing a card. Finding another Goyf. Cast cast it, play a Delta, passing back. Opponent attacks in with a Smasher, we'll block with a Goyf. That just resolves. Then they cast out a Fury, killing our Dryad Arbor and Tarmogoyf, and then we'll dress down in their main phase. Dress down draws us a push. We draw another Tarmogoyf. We'll attack in with a Goyf, and no blocks from the opponent. Then we'll play out a Goyf. Opponent casts a Chalice out on 2, and no attacks from them. We draw another land per turn. We'll attack in with Goyfs. They block 1, and we'll Fatal Push our Tarmogoyf, which gets countered from Chalice, and grows them to 6/7s. Opponent's down to 3, and they scoop it up. Let's get into game 3. Game 3, we're going to take out Street Wraith for Force of Vigor. Game 3, hands a Keeper. Opponent goes turn 1 smashing into a Ragavan. We draw Bobble. We'll look at our top, seen an Invasion. We'll keep that on top, so we'll shock in our Overgrown Tomb. Opponent plays a Cavern on Human. Attacks in, we'll push the Monkey. Then cast out another Ragavan. We draw a Verdant for turn. We'll fetch shock, grabbing a Tomb, and playing out our Tarmogoyf. Opponent attacks in, we'll block. Post combat, they evoke out a Fury, killing our Goyf. They miss a land drop. We'll Thoughtseize the opponent, taking their Matter Reshaper. Then we'll fetch shock in a Grave and play out 2 Shadows. Passing back, opponent plays out a Chalice. We find a Traverse. We'll cast out our Grist. Pick up Grist, milling over a Street Wraith, and then attack in for 6. And opponent's down to 11. Opponent plays an Eldrazi Temple into a Thought-Knot Seer, and opponent scoops them up. Overall, we went 3-2 with the deck. Pretty impressive. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Please consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.